Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday. How we doing?
Yeah!
You know, it's like the first warm Friday we've had in a long time. Let's give that one more round of applause.
Yeah!
We made it through the winter. Congratulations, everybody. Welcome to the Spring Dig Jazz 2023. This is our first concert here at the Arts and Literature Laboratory. This concert is co-presented by the Madison Music Collective and our wonderful host, the Arts and Literature Laboratory. Can we give those two entities a round of applause? Before we get started with all the great music, please allow me to spend a little time and acknowledge the people that make this event free and open to everybody. So I'm going to read a long list, and please help me with some applause afterwards. So we'd like to thank the John and Carolyn Peterson Charitable Foundation, Dane Arts, the Wisconsin Arts Board, the Madison Arts Commission, Janus Galleries, Arts Midwest, and their Gig Fund. We'd also like to thank our community radio station at WRTFM. Can we give them all a round of applause? We'd also like to acknowledge and thank our sound engineer, Jim Newhouser from Studio Earth, who's doing some great work today in this wonderful space. I want to call your attention that this is a series, so we have 3 more concerts happening here at Arts and Literature Laboratory this spring. Our next one will be Friday, April 28th with Wayne Salzman and his Groove Society. It's going to be an awesome show of groove-based music, like the title. And Wayne is a very accomplished drummer that is from the Wisconsin area, but really cut his teeth in the Austin area, and then just moved back to this area with his family. So we're really happy that he's back. And then on Friday, May 12th, the great saxophone player Gian will be here with his group. So please come back. Again, these shows are all free and open to the public, and tell some friends. We appreciate that. Our artist tonight is going to play one long set. Towards the end, there might be an opportunity for some questions. So if you do have any questions about this new and original material that you're hearing tonight, this is your think about that, and we'll engage with that later on. This artist really needs very little introduction because he's been a juggernaut here in the scene doing what he does, and he does it really well. If you notice, his merch table is out there, his merch, and in addition, if you look at the various CDs and projects, you can see how accomplished and well-rounded he is. So I would say a master of all things string. Please put your hands together for Christo Ruppenthal.
all so much. Thank you all very much for being here. It's my pleasure to be able to present all this music that I wrote tonight. Kind of a special, unique gig. I think that I was thinking about this. I think that I've only had one other opportunity to really present, kind of focus on my original material, and that was another project that I had, which this is kind of a hybrid of actually a Caravan gypsy swing ensemble, a long-running band, my longest-running band in Madison, and Greg is a member of that band. And we were able to play the same series like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago or something down at the library downtown. I think back when it was still called the Indigenous series. And so it's just really great, very fun to be able to present original music, because that's a cool and interesting part of jazz. When you play jazz, you play a lot of covers or standards, whatever you want to call them. I guess standards within the world of jazz and covers if you're, a jazz novice. But that first song was called Je ne sais quoi, and that was one that I wrote very early on in my jazz career. I started out as playing jazz, and I was really kind of a student of Wes Montgomery, and I can talk about this kind of stuff because I'm assuming that since it's a jazz series, we're a little bit of a jazz crowd to a certain degree. But Wes Montgomery was an early jazz guitar hero of mine. Playing electric guitar. When I first moved to Madison after, as a young kid, I started working on work on music, and I came to school to town because I got a degree in musical instrument repair, and it was kind of my excuse for a way to get to a cool town, get to know a bunch of musicians while I was honing my craft and stuff like that. And I started Caravan around that time, and that was one of the early songs that we played, and it was one of the first compositions that I wrote in the style. This was after I had kind of like gotten done with the Wes Montgomery stuff, and I found Django Reinhardt. Is everybody here, or is anybody here not familiar? I don't want to call anybody out about Django. So I'll just say Django Reinhardt was an early jazz guitar player, kind of the core of a lot of my projects. My project with Greg, with Caravan, and a big part of my project with Forrest and Gian over there. And that's the style of this kind of like European French jazz of the 30s. One of the first kind of virtuoso soloists in playing guitar, kind of bridging the gap between the saxophone and the trumpet, and actually doing those types of things on the guitar. That was he became my when I first heard Django, it was like a total right turn into that style. And it was perfect for me because it was an incorporation of swing music that I loved, early American standards, and this kind of like European folk music. I'm a rabid fan of regional folk music and ethnic music and world music and things like that. So it was kind of like this perfect mix. And so when I really started playing professionally in Madison, it was doing this stuff. I only did a few electric guitar gigs, and then I started a Caravan, and the rest is history. I've done a bunch of different other things, but that last song was on Caravan's first record, which I think came out in 2005 or something like that. I'm dating myself. The Caravan is going to turn 20 in August. I don't know if you would realize that. Yeah, get your walker right. Anyway, I'm talking a lot, but I guess I'm going to do that probably because this is a way for me to talk about my original music. But so that was Je ne sais quoi, again, on the Caravan's very first record, a self-titled record. This next song is on there too. And this next song is actually was born out of that transition from my journey learning and studying about Wes Montgomery and American, like 1960s blue note style jazz guitar, and then kind of like getting into Django. Django had a lot of peculiarities, both physically and just technically in his playing, and so this next song kind of incorporates a lot of it was like a way for me to force myself to learn how to play like Django, because I wrote a lot of just kind of tricky licks and the techniques that it takes to play in that genre into this next song. And I called it Swing 03, which was after 2003, it was the year that I wrote it, so very early. I mean, this was like the first year that Caravan existed. And I like to tell this little story. So Django had this habit of showing up to recording contracts and not having quite enough songs to perform to fill his contract. And so what they would do is that they would improvise or jam a song in the studio, and it would just be kind of like named after whatever year they were in the studio. I don't know why exactly, but it happened over and over again. There was Swing 39, Swing 41, Swing 42, Swing 48. And so this was not, back 20 years ago, I didn't have a recording contract that I was, not showing up prepared for. It was just kind of a way to kind of play into that vibe of Django and kind of like just signify this is, a 20-year-old song for me that I'm still playing now. And so, there's a lot of that Django, the juice is in there, like all of his tricky licks and things like that. So Swing 03. And I promise not to talk nearly this much between the additional songs. Just wanted to set you up here. Ready? 2003. Like I said, Caravan is now turned 20 years old this year in August. I think our first gig was August 7th. I actually have a poster still from that very first Caravan gig. And I'm still trying to kind of brainstorm what we might do to kind of make something special about that later this summer. We'll have some, see how many alumni we can get, and I don't know, we'll see. We'll figure it out. But, going light speed into the future, during our shared trauma over the last couple of years during the pandemic, going into 2020, it was really looking like my performance career was going to hit a real high point. This is not a depressing story, I promise. But going into 2020, by the end of January, I had about 110 gigs booked already for the year. And we all know what happened in March. We won't even talk about that. But I took about 4 months off of music. In fact, I've told the story before where I kind of like really repurposed my creativity. I wouldn't say that I was totally depressed because I kind of felt like I was maybe a little burned out at that point anyway, because I've been, like I said, playing here in town for 20 years, playing bar gigs and all kinds of stuff. But I took about 4 months off, and I kind of like refocused my creativity and other things. I was, doing the pandemic cliche of cooking sourdough bread in my oven at home and whatever, cooking and just trying to figure out other ways to be creative because all my gigs had dried up. By May, everything was gone, and so I didn't play music. In fact, I did not play an entire song, I don't think, until July or something like that. And it wasn't like 100% depression, obviously, there was some of that. We all went through it, but at that point, I just had kind of like a fire lit in me all of a sudden, and music came roaring back for me. And what I did was I put a project studio in my basement. We had finished a basement room in my basement and put soundproofing in, and then it became kind of a storage room. And so I emptied it out, and I started learning about studio gear over the course of a couple months. And I assembled a pretty nice project studio in my basement, and I've now, just recently, only a couple months ago, I finished my third full-length solo record, which we've all done at home, and I play every note in all three of these records. So it's the recording, the performance, the arrangement, everything on it, including the performance, every note that you hear on these three records are me. And it was interesting because this was the only thing that I could do for a creative outlet because we were all isolated and whatever. So the first one was an interesting project called Antique Aloha. If you're only familiar with my jazz side of my career, I also am a devoted and passionate Hawaiian music historian, not because the Ruppenthal name is not Hawaiian. But as I said earlier, I'm a real fan of regional folk music and traditional music from all throughout the world. But my biggest passion is steel guitar. My gateway to that was through Western swing music, the music of Bob Wills, like Oklahoma, Texas Playboys, kind of stuff, Hank Williams, that kind of thing. But as with anything, including the guitar, once I got to a certain point, I became more and more interested in the history of that, and so I dove real deep into Hawaiian steel guitar music because that's the first steel guitar music. And so that was the first project, and I've since done a second Antique Aloha. Both those records are out there, but the most important reason that we're all here tonight is that the middle record that I did in my project studio was called Café Allongé, and it's all of my original music from all my different bands, kind of reinterpreted, rearranged, and I'm playing the jazz guitar, various different jazz guitars. I'm playing the Hawaiian steel guitar on Django style repertoire. I'm also playing the ukulele on that record. And so that a lot of that content on Café Allongé is what we're presenting tonight. And the title track, Café Allongé, is this is an espresso drink, basically something you could order at a coffee house. It's also known as a lungo, which is essentially a long drawn espresso. So more water goes through the grounds to create a Café Allongé or a lungo. It's a lungo if you're in Italy. If you're in France, it's a Café Allongé. And that's basically what kept me going and making all these records during the pandemic. I was just sitting at the espresso machine, like guitar, espresso, guitar, espresso. And so that's how I come up with all these frantic songs. But this next song we're going to do is one of my more recent compositions. In fact, it was created for that record, and it became the title track on that record. I think there's 4 or 5 songs on Café Allongé that were not repurposed. They were composed for that recording project on these various instruments that I'm playing. And so we're going to play Café Allongé now. It's kind of become a big part of both Caravan's repertoire and my Novelty Combo, which includes Forrest and Gian. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit once we get to the steel guitar stuff. But we'll just play Café Allongé for you. So once again, think about an espresso or something to get you. Don't nod off during this one. I promise you won't. Café Allongé. Thank you very much. Once again, that's Café Allongé, the title track from my all-original solo record. We're going to follow that one up with another new one. This is a very, very recent song. In fact, it's so recent that it didn't even make it onto that most recent all-original record that I recorded. I only wrote it like maybe 6 months ago or something. And it's called Agua Quente, which in Portuguese means hot water. And I know it's a very exotic title, and you know about my history in folk music and traditional song forms and things like that. Well, this song actually is inspired by me sitting next to my hot water heater and trying to get it working once again during the pandemic, and no one would come out and fix it for us. So I sat downstairs and turned it on and off until it fired up again. It's just kind of an ongoing problem in our house. It seems to keep happening. We have to keep getting it fixed, but yeah. So this is that's how the backstory for this very exotic sounding song called Agua Quente, which is a samba. And it's the first Latin tune we're going to play tonight. This is another example of just those other styles seeping into my music. And so I hope you like it. It's called Agua Quente, hot water. 1, 2, 1, 2. This next one is called The Doppelganger, and it's a song that I wrote a really long time ago, like just when I was very first starting out in the band, playing Django's music. I had just started Caravan, and I guess, I'm trying to remember, I guess Kevin Tipple was in the band. So Kevin is the bass player that you would recognize from Caravan. This is Forrest. But Kevin was in Caravan, and he and a fellow named Chandler, who was I think the second guitar player in Caravan, the three of us recorded a demo of this song like really early on, and it's called Doppelganger, and I don't really have much of a story other than that it's an old tune, and it's kind of a funky, fun, weird waltz. So here we go, The Doppelganger. as I'm looking at the set list now, that we're really, we put the Café Allongé in, but we're really dusting off some old ones. And this is another really old one. Back when I was starting Caravan, I was really struggling as any professional or a musician in general to try to figure out what am I going to call my band. And so I went through this whole process, and this next song was one of the ideas that I had for what Caravan may have been way back when, in 2002 or 2003 or something. But it actually wound up being the name of my record label instead. And it's a nice, fun, upbeat swing tune. It's called Hot String Swing. Thank you all so much. Once again, it's the hot string swing. And now I have to fiddle with my finger picks because I'm going to grab the strange looking instrument to my side here. This is called a national trichome, and this is the first resonator guitar that was ever invented back in 1926. This example here is from 1927 or 1928, I can't remember. That's very early. So resonator guitars became very popular with blues musicians and with folk musicians and things like that. But at the very beginning, the first resonator guitar, this instrument was called the trichome, and that's because there are three small 6 or 7 inch speaker cones on the inside, which you might be able to see through that grill cloth, or that grill on the top. Basically what this instrument did back in the late 1920s was it took the steel guitar, which was extremely popular due to the popularity of Hawaiian music, starting in about 1915 with the Pan Pacific Expo. There was kind of an explosion of popularity in Hawaiian music back then that has largely been forgotten, but it was one of the most popular genres or styles of music throughout the world, and definitely in the United States. And if you find an antique Victrola, a crank record player from that time frame in a record, in an antique mall or whatever, you're almost guaranteed to find Hawaiian music on the inside. And so what this instrument did was, prior to it, all steel guitars were made of wood, which sounds counterintuitive because it's a steel guitar. People think about, it must be made of metal. This particular guitar is actually made of metal, but that's not why it's called a steel guitar. It's called a steel guitar because of the bar that you use to slide around the instrument. And as I said earlier, being a fan of traditional forms and folk forms of music, and especially Hawaiian music, I started to learn the steel guitar about 10 years ago or something like that. My entry point was, as I said earlier, Western swing, the music of Bob Wilson, Hank Williams, but I went back further and further. And as I said, I put out the 2 Antique Aloha records, which kind of explore the popular Hawaiian music of the late 20s, mid-20s, and early 30s. I was doing that throughout the pandemic, and then as soon as things started to subside and got a little warmer, I found myself in Gian's backyard, and we were jamming on Django Reinhardt tunes, and he invited Forrest over to play. And we were just kind of hanging out, playing music, and I had these records at Café Allongé, and I had these 2 Hawaiian, I had the first Hawaiian record, and I've since put out the other one. But after about a month's worth of jamming, I would just hit these guys up, and I'm like, hey, do you guys want to start a band with me? Like, will you guys learn this weird early Hawaiian music with me? Because it's kind of like, I can't say it's genre adjacent, but the music of Django Reinhardt and the music of the vaudeville and early jazz influenced Hawaiian music is pretty close. Stylistically, obviously, Django never had a ukulele in the band, he never had a steel guitar in the band, but Sol Hopi'i, the king of the Hawaiian steel guitar, did play songs like St. Louis Blues and Limehouse Blues and I Can't Give You Anything But Love. And this was a Hawaiian band, Hawaiian musicians came to the mainland, did the vaudeville circuit, and were playing American jazz music with Hawaiian instrumentation. And so this is a very fascinating time period in music history for me. And so I thought maybe we could come up with a cool band to kind of fuse the Django sound with this early Hawaiian steel guitar music that I was learning. And so they were willing, they begrudgingly or not, they never showed it to me. They came along for the ride, and so we started a group which I called Christo's Novelty Combo, which is a nod to the man I mentioned earlier, Sol Hopi'i, who was the kind of the king of 1920s hot Hawaiian steel guitar, one of the first to really be able to creatively improvise in a jazz way on this instrument, on the slide guitar. So the story is that Sol was in 1926, he was a stowaway on a luxury cruise ship that came from the Hawaiian Islands and landed in Los Angeles. And within a year, he was like a total star. He was like signed to Columbia Records and huge name. And so, it's been fun working with these two and trying to kind of push these two things together. And we've actually gotten to the point where we're actually playing Django's repertoire but I'm playing it on the steel guitar, so we're doing Nuage and Blue Dragon and a variety of other things. Hopefully we'll do an entire record of that material at some point soon once I get my steel guitar act together a little bit more. And we want a little bit more repertoire, but along the way, of course, I'm going to be writing songs for the steel guitar. And I did have a band prior to the pandemic called Melody, which some of you may have seen me perform with. It was just a duo with a friend named Cedric, and he played slack key Hawaiian guitar, and I played steel guitar. But he was also French, and so he could sing French popular music. And he was also a Django fan, and so we started this process, which I'm hoping that we're going to refine with this trio here, of kind of like putting the Django sound together with steel guitar music and Hawaiian music. And so this first song that we're going to perform is an original that I wrote for that band, for Maladois. I mean, there are some CDs out there if you're curious about that sound that I've kind of explained. But this first song we're going to do is an original that I wrote like in 2016 or something. It is on a Maladois record. It's also on Café Allongé in a new version. It's called Kalika's Melee. And being the Hawaiian music historian, I like to say amateur ethnomusicologist, because I can, I have no letters behind my name to prove anything, but it's a passion of mine. So Kalika is a transliteration of my name Chris in the Hawaiian language. So to say Chris in Hawaiian, it's Kalika, K-I-L-I-K-A. Because they have only a few consonants and a few vowels in their language. And the song Melee, the word Melee just means song. So this next song is Chris's song, or Kalika's Melee. Open tuning. Here we go. see what we got next. So this next song is, did anybody hear me on WRT this morning? All right, one person, that's good. At least you're here, thank you for coming, I'm glad you heard that. I was on Andy Moore's 8 o'clock buzz this morning, and this next song was a song that we featured on the show during my brief interview at the end of the show. Andy's been a good friend and a promoter and a promoter of my music and various different projects over the year. And you all know him. Even if you don't know him, you know Andy because he's often the announcer at the big festivals, at Fete Marquette and stuff. He's the one announcing the bands and getting everybody jazzed up. So he has a program on WRT, our lovely local community-sponsored radio show, or station, I should say. And I played little interludes and stuff throughout the program, and then we featured this next song, which is a brand new tune for Café Allongé prior to the Novelty Combo with Forrest and Gian. This had not been really performed or recorded before. And it's called I'll See You Again, and kind of written with the spirit of a conversation between voices. A lot of these songs, obviously I have my technical type compositions where the melody is like technically based. And then I have other melodies that I really think about when I'm recording about conversation and about words and sentences and things like that, because I think that's like a core of good composition. It gives people who are maybe not into the technical stuff something to really grab onto with their ear. Just having like the syllables and the rhythm be like language. And this song is called I'll See You Again because it's kind of like on the record, it's a conversation between the ukulele and the steel guitar. And it's kind of like this back and forth of like, just missing one another during the pandemic and then finally being able to reunite and things like that. So Greg's gonna play the clarinet, the ukulele now. No, the clarinet. Yeah. He's gonna take the ukulele part and play it on the clarinet. And this is I'll See You Again. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit in the set list, but I guess that just means you're going to have to follow me around and come out and see my other bands, and then you can see any of the missing songs. We're going to move on to another song from the Caravan repertoire. I'm going to jump back on the Django style guitar. And yeah, this one is just a song that Caravan is a Brazilian cocktail, and I wrote a Latin tune way back when, and I named it a Caravan. That's all there is to the story. We were realizing and joking around about the set list that there's actually, I have quite a few songs that are named after different drinks. You know, they're not all alcoholic drinks. In fact, most of them are caffeine related. This one is a boozy song. It's called Caravan. Well, thank you all so much for coming here. It's really my pleasure and honor to be able to do something like this, and I appreciate you all being here. We have 2 more songs for you, so we're going to do one now, and then we're going to, if anybody has any questions or whatever, we'll save it until after this song, and then we'll play one more to send you on your way. This next song is a song called Magnus Swing, and it's named after restaurant Magnus, which used to be in where Tempest is now downtown. I'm sure Nick knows where Magnus was, and I hope that a lot of you remember Magnus fondly too. That was a real haunt, in between 2000 and 2010. That was kind of like one of the pinnacles in Madison of great jazz, that along with the Concourse Hotel and any other places that I cut my teeth when I first moved here. At one point, I looked back at the Caravan calendar, and they weren't all Caravan gigs, because I used to play with another bass player named Paul Lynch there once in a while. Me and an old Caravan band member named Ed Fila, who goes way back in the band. The 3 of us would play at Magnus too. And over the years, I played 87 times at Magnus, according to my rough estimate of the old Caravan calendar stuff. And it was just one of my favorite places to be and one of my favorite places to play, and so I wrote the song for Magnus. And it's called the Magnus Swing.
of applause for some great Just real quickly, before we get to our last tune, I want to remind you this is a series that our next concert will be April 28th, right here at Arts and Literature Laboratory, and feature Wayne Salzman's Groove Society. And then we'll finish our series here May 12th with Django Reinhardt. So make sure you mark your calendars and tell a friend. I also want to acknowledge that the Madison Music Collective, our co-presenter here, we have some board members here, Nick Bartell, Mary Sykes, Sue Peterson. So if you want to get involved with the Madison Music Collective, please talk to one of them after the show. And we can definitely use the support. We get to do these great fun concerts and bring some music to the community. But this has been not only a great performance, but also like a lecture. I love it. I've learned a lot of things today. And also, no, it's been really informative. So, this is your opportunity. If there's any questions in the audience about, the creative process, or, again, this is a forum for original music. So, any questions about that for the artist? This is your chance. Nick.
Chris, love all your songs. It's really delightful. One thing that your compositions share with jazz composers going back way in history is the concept of counterfacts, which means new melodies written over existing chord changes for famous songs. And we could hear it because Greg is quoting some of the other songs. My question is, do you find inspiration in that, and do you ever feel pressure to sort of go outside of that and do chord progressions and ideas that you haven't heard before?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think I do both, it just depends. I feel like composition, my best stuff is like kind of spontaneous, like it just sort of comes out. But I definitely am wholly guilty of finding a great chord progression and writing a melody over it. There's actually, within the Django, the Jazz Manouche tradition, there's a song called, what was it, Swing 93. Swing 93, which is by, is that by
Chablo Swing.
Oh, Chablo Swing, yeah, there's just a little confusion about all those swing songs. So on my song Swing 03, this is a great example of me this is a man named Chablo Schmidt, who is probably, if I had to pick one of the modern Django style players, it would be him. He's got this beautiful joy and humor, and it's like everything is a joke to him, as opposed to some of the other players, which are also totally brilliant but have kind of a brooding character. And they have this great record, which is, what is it called, Gypsy Party? That record that it comes from?
Gypsy Reunion.
Gypsy Reunion. And so Chablo Schmidt and Dorado Schmidt and Hono Winterstein and Chablo's wife, this beautiful record, they have this song that, what's it called?
Chablo Swing.
Chablo Swing, yeah. So that chord progression is in G. And I fell in love with that, and I love playing that song, and I started learning it. And then I just I changed the key to C and wrote the melody for Swing 03. And this was, again, I'll take you back to earlier on in the set. That was when that song that I mentioned that I was wrote in a bunch of kind of tricky Django guitar licks and techniques, so it forced me to learn how to play those things correctly. And so I was just cutting my teeth in the music and just consuming as much of that repertoire and those recordings as possible. So that's a great example of that. But I mean, on the flip side of that, the first song, Je ne sais quoi, that one just kind of came to me. And I have not found, I mean, it is kind of it's hard to reinvent the wheel, jazz songs are a lot of 2/5 chord progressions and things like that, but that's kind of a unique, it moves in unique ways. And that was one of those things where it just the whole song came to me, and I don't want to talk super philosophically, but there's some truth to that, when you have a great composition, sometimes it just comes out of you, and it's all just done. It's there, and I feel like if I have to labor over a song or a part of it, then I'll come back to it. It never turns out as good as the songs that just come to me all at once. And so, and then from another lens, a different perspective, there's all the Latin repertoire that I've written and the steel guitar repertoire. It kind of comes from a lot of different ways, but I think that this is an exercise jazz musicians do. They find a chord progression that they like and they write a new melody over it. In fact, that's how bebop was born. All those melodies of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and all those greats of 50s jazz. you know, they're like copying the melody or the chord progression in Indiana or whatever, and like writing a new melody over it. You know, I guess it's creative, it's different, it's modern. It's also a way to not have to pay copyright dues when you make a recording. But yeah, short story long, that's my answer.
All right. Is there another question? Maybe just one more for the audience? Yeah.
When you did demos where you talked about Django and you talked about his deformity, could you like explain that for anybody that might not know?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't. So whenever I play with Caravan, and oftentimes when we play as a combo, I talk a lot about Django Reinhardt. Like whenever I have a concert setting, and I did kind of take it to an extreme today. I talk a lot in between, especially at the beginning of the set. Since Nick gave me this pulpit, I figured I would use it. I talk a lot about Django because this is a big part of it. We do a lot of like library concert series, and you know, I like to do like whenever I can get gigs like that, city concert series, opera house things where we can present music in a forum just like this. And so it's nice to kind of give all this music context, so it's not just a bunch of like technical notes and things like that. But so I do talk a lot about Django, and the story about Django is that Django, as I mentioned earlier, he was an early jazz guitar player. His career started prior to the invention of the electric guitar. He started out playing French cabaret music and musette waltz music on a banjo guitar in musette bands in the teens and 20s, and then in the 30s, he started to incorporate the music of Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, early jazz players, and kind of created one of the only few forms of jazz that was not created in America, because jazz is primarily in American music, and the music of Django Reinhardt, Jazz Manouche, because all of the Roma gypsies were in Europe, and so they were the ones in France kind of creating this music with Django and people that he played with and the satellite bands that were copying them. They created this genre that you know is now known as Jazz Manouche or gypsy jazz. So prior to, even before his jazz career, his guitar career, he was married to his first wife, and she lived in a caravan in Paris on the outskirts of town, and he coming home from one of those early gigs as musicians normally stumble in the door. This is a sad story. We don't want to end on a bummer, but it's just the truth of the matter, that he managed to knock over a candle in their caravan, and his wife made celluloid flowers to sell at the farmer's market, and it burned their caravan down. And he was actually hospitalized for 18 months apparently, and there were various attempts to smuggle him out of the hospital because the doctors wanted to remove his leg, and he had these terrible burns like up one side of his body. And his hand, his fretboard hand was burned so badly that his first two knuckles were like back, and they were fused down to the first joint, and he really only had the use of two fingers. And so all this crazy technical music is really primarily being played on only two fingers when you do the pure thing. And I just want to call out this guy over here, Gian. You only hear him play rhythm tonight, but he's a beautiful guitar player too. He didn't want to solo because it was my gig. I gave him the pass, but during our shows in the Novelty Combo, we often feature him, and he plays, he's learned Django's entire I'll See You in My Dreams solo. And it's all done with the two-finger style, so you can do the entire, basically up to recording speed. We do a feature for him where he plays just like Django with just the two fingers, and this is like really how you learn this music of Django and gypsy jazz, because we don't have now we do more than we used to, but like when I started playing this stuff, there was no educational resources whatsoever. It was all listening to recordings, trying to learn solos, use your ear, and that's how this music, the music of Django and his people, that's how it was taught. It was taught from father to son, from brother to brother, friend to friend. It's like a communal thing. Everybody plays music all the time together, and it's learned from one another. It's not done in like the university way of learning music and theory and things like that. It's a community thing. And so I really went on a long tangent there, but yeah. So Django, that was the point of this whole thing, was just that Django played all this brilliant music throughout his whole jazz career, like 800 and some recordings, basically just with two fingers. And this is like the kind of thing where all of his followers were all like chasing in his long shadow and trying to do impossibly what he did with two fingers with full functionality. And so that's like part of the lore and the mystique of this music. And I think what makes this sound so unique of a lot of the phrasing and the style and things like that, but a lot of the roads that you travel as a guitar player, you travel because learning Django's music, you kind of have to do these weird things because, you know, he was playing with 2 fingers on the fretboard, and so you kind of have these unique, interesting ways to get through phrasing and stuff that's very specific to that music. So, again, short story long.
Well, we're going to get to one last tune, I think.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you guys for your questions. You know, I'm not really supposed to do this. I wanted to thank Jolyn Broda, the artistic director here at Arts and Literature Laboratory, for hosting it here and all of her efforts with this too. And I'm not, like as I mentioned, I'm not supposed to do this, but we're not going to announce our Jazz Fest lineup, the Madison Jazz Fest lineup for another 2 weeks. But you guys are so cool. You came out and supported live music. I just want to let you know it's going to be June 8th to the 18th. Featuring 10 days of stuff all around Madison, culminating on Union Terrace. We're featuring Miguel Sanan, the Bad Plus, and Mark Verbeau, Dana Stevens as well. And those are even the headliners. And we have a lot of great local acts. You'll hear an important set from Hannah John Taylor, a really fun community event with big flowers. And there's a lot of stuff. So you'll hear the full announcement soon. But mark that on your calendar. We'll celebrate jazz in Madison in June. And with that, one final tune from Chris. Thank you so much for this great music.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks to Nick and thanks to the Art Lab, thanks to Madison Music Collective and the Jazz Consortium. There's so many people, and I saw all the promotion, and I hope that you know you were all reached by whether it was paper, radio, or one of the various different social media outlets to get here. But yeah, as Nick said, like definitely this is the kind of thing that makes Madison cool and special. For the size that it is, we have so many cool, interesting cultural things happening here all the time. So it's important now that we're like kind of feeling a little bit more confident and capable and able to get out and support things like that. It's super important to continue doing that. Everybody had a lot of support during the pandemic for the arts, and we just hope that all continues. So whether it's this series or the Jazz Fest or something else, just keep going out and seeing live music and help artists. So with that. The last song of the night is another composition of mine. This is one of my favorites, and it was recorded by Caravan first. In fact, it was recorded kind of on a pre-release demo, and then also on the first Caravan record. But I just recorded it again for Café Allongé, and we've been playing it a lot in the Novelty Combo. It's called Tango and Nominato, which basically is, the name of it is Tango and Nominato, which means the tango without a name, so it's kind of like this weird, confusing cycle. But Tango and Nominato. Combo with these guys, Caravan with these guys, and also the Western Swing Band where I play both electric jazz guitar and steel guitar, playing country and hillbilly repertoire. You can find all that at myname.com, ChristoRuppenthal.com. If you can't spell that, which I wouldn't be surprised. You can also go to noveltycombo.com, which is our band name, noveltycombo.com. Just takes you to the same website. So you can find my full calendar. I have a whole bunch of stuff coming all over southern Wisconsin. In fact, I even have a trip going all the way around the Great Lakes and back home again over the summer, so that'll be exciting. So a bunch of stuff coming up, and hopefully some recordings and new stuff coming up hopefully for Caravan. I keep saying that. These guys too, hopefully we can do some stuff. Anyway, thanks again, Nick, and thanks to the consortium and to the Madison Music Collective and to the folks at Garden Lab and all the wonderful sponsors for making it possible for me to present my music. And thank you all for coming tonight. And I hope to see you again.